Hi everyone. Welcome back to English Without Limit. I'm Julia, and I'm really happy you're here with me today. Whether you're walking, commuting, cooking, or just relaxing with your headphones, thank you for choosing this moment to practice your English. This podcast is your space to learn, reflect, and grow in your language journey. We know how challenging it can be to learn English. Not just the grammar and vocabulary, but actually speaking it with confidence, clarity, and flow. And that's exactly what we're focusing on today. Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like you know the words, but still can't express yourself clearly in English? Like the sentence is in your mind, but when you try to speak, it comes out in a strange or confusing way. Maybe you search for the perfect word and get stuck. Maybe you say something, but the other person doesn't really understand you. That can feel frustrating, right? It's like you've studied so much, yet in the moment, you freeze. If that sounds familiar, you are definitely not alone. This is something so many people go through. I've heard it from students in Rome, in Warsaw, in Budapest, even in smaller cities like Ghent or Porto. They say, "Julia, I can read and write. I understand podcasts and movies, but when I try to speak, I get nervous. My words don't come out right. And you know what? That's not your fault. It doesn't mean you're bad at English. It doesn't mean you need more grammar books. Most of the time, it just means you haven't practiced the right kind of speaking. Natural, everyday communication. That's what we're going to work on together. Our theme today is how to improve your communication skills in English. Not just how to sound more fluent, but how to actually connect with people when you speak. How to be understood. How to keep a conversation going. How to feel confident and relaxed even if you make small mistakes. Because let's be honest, perfection is not the goal. Communication is. We're going to look at simple ways to speak more clearly. I'll share with you stories of people who struggled with the same problem and how they changed their habits. These aren't advanced techniques from textbooks. These are real strategies you can start using today. You won't need hours of extra study. Just a shift in how you think and practice. And I'll be here with you every step of the way. Let me also remind you of something important. Your accent doesn't need to disappear. Your sentence structure doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to sound like a native speaker. You just need to be understood. That's it. And the more you focus on clarity, the more confident you'll feel. So today's episode is all about helping you move in that direction. Now, before we jump into the stories and tips, I want you to think about your own experience for a moment. When was the last time you felt unsure while speaking English? Maybe it was during a work call. Maybe at a restaurant while traveling. Or maybe just ordering coffee in a cafe. What made that moment difficult? Was it the vocabulary? Was it the speed? Was it a lack of confidence? Take a second to remember that situation, because as we go through this episode, I want you to keep it in mind. The goal is to give you tools that help you feel more prepared the next time that kind of moment happens. And here's something else I want you to remember as we go forward. English is not just a language for tests or school. It's a tool for real life, for connecting with people, making friends, sharing ideas, asking questions, solving problems. That's the kind of English we talk about here. So, If you've ever felt frustrated with formal lessons or traditional classrooms, this podcast is for you. Many people learn English for years but still avoid speaking. Why? Because they're afraid of saying something wrong. They don't want to be judged. They don't want to sound silly. But here's the truth. Speaking is a skill. And like any skill, the only way to improve it is to use it. You don't learn to swim by reading a book. You learn by getting in the water. It's the same with communication. You need practice, not perfection. So today, I invite you to listen closely. Not just with your ears, but with your experience. You're going to hear relatable stories, practical advice, and easy strategies to help you speak more clearly and confidently. You'll find that you don't need more complicated words. You just need the right words. You don't need to speak faster. You need to speak smarter. And you don't need to sound like someone else. You need to sound like you, in English. As we go on, I'll also share a few questions for you to think about. These are not tests. They're just small reflections to help you connect what you hear to your own life. So even if you're just listening casually right now, let these questions stay with you. Maybe you'll think about them later today, or tomorrow during your next English conversation. All right, ready to start? Let's take a deep breath together. In and out. You're here. You're doing something good for yourself. You're not just learning English. You're building your confidence, your skills, and your future. And I'm really proud of you for that. Let's get started. Let's talk about something really important today. Something that might completely change the way you think about speaking English. Communication. Real, clear, honest communication. Because the truth is, speaking English well isn't about being perfect. It's not about using fancy words or long sentences. It's not about sounding like someone else. It's about connection. That's the real goal. Being able to express an idea clearly, to understand someone, and to feel understood. That's what makes communication successful. And that's what really matters. Let's talk about why this happens. When you speak in long, complicated sentences, especially in a second language, there's a higher chance you'll lose your way. You might forget how the sentence started, or which verb you were using. You might hesitate, repeat yourself, or fill the space with and while you try to think. This is normal. Even native speakers do it sometimes. But when you learn to say things in a shorter, more structured way, you keep your message clear, and your mind feels more organized. I always say, short and clear often beats long and confusing. Think about that for a second. It's not about using fewer words just to be brief. It's about choosing the right words so your listener doesn't have to work hard to understand you. That's what makes someone a great communicator. And yes, this applies to professional settings too. You don't need to sound like a textbook or a lawyer to speak well. In fact, some of the best communicators in the world are the ones who make complex ideas feel easy to understand. Let's look at a few practical examples together. Imagine you want to say, in my opinion, the project could benefit from additional resources in order to improve efficiency and meet the upcoming deadline. That's a lot of words. And while it's not incorrect, it's heavy and hard to follow, especially in a fast-paced conversation. A shorter and clearer version might be, We need more help to finish on time. Same message. Much easier to understand. The first version sounds formal. The second version sounds real. Here's another one. Instead of saying, I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone who contributed to the completion of this task, you can simply say, thanks to everyone who helped. It's still polite. It's still professional. But it's direct. It's the kind of sentence that makes your message clear right away. Now let's think about daily conversations. Imagine you're talking to a colleague and you say, I am not entirely sure whether or not the system update was completed successfully. That's okay, but again, it's long. Instead, you can say, I'm not sure if the update worked. This version is simple and clear. It gets your point across with no confusion. In situations where time matters like team calls, messages, or customer service, using short and clear sentences makes everything smoother. Here's one more example. Instead of saying, I'm reaching out to request additional information regarding the status of our shipment, you can say, can you update me on the shipment? It's shorter, faster, and easier for the listener to respond to. When your goal is communication, not performance, short and simple is your best friend. Sometimes learners avoid short sentences because they worry it might sound too basic. But that's not true. Short sentences can sound strong, smart, and confident when you say them clearly. Listen to how native speakers talk in real life. You'll notice they often speak in short bursts. Let's do it tomorrow. I'll check and let you know. That sounds good to me. It's not fancy, but it works. It keeps the conversation flowing, and it makes everything feel natural. A lot of learners also believe that using advanced vocabulary shows fluency. But the real test of fluency is whether people can understand you without effort. If someone has to stop and ask you to repeat what you just said, then it doesn't matter how advanced your words are. What matters is connection. When you speak clearly, people feel that you're talking to them, not at them. And that creates trust. One technique I recommend is rewriting your own sentences. Start by saying what you want to say the way it comes to your mind, even if it's long. Then ask yourself, how would I say this to a friend? Often, the answer is much shorter. Practice this with real situations. Before a meeting or a phone call, prepare a few key ideas and write them in short sentences. Use simple words. Focus on your main message. This helps you stay confident when it's time to speak. Another helpful strategy is to listen and copy. Choose an English speaker you like, maybe from a podcast or a video, and pay attention to how they speak. Notice the length of their sentences. Notice the structure. You'll probably find that the best communicators are not the ones using the biggest words. They are the ones who are clear. Try repeating what they say out loud. Get comfortable using those short forms. Make it a habit. If you're someone who tends to overthink your English, this method will help you relax. When you stop trying to be impressive and start focusing on being understood, you'll speak more naturally. You'll stop pausing every few words. You'll stop searching for perfect grammar in the middle of a sentence. You'll begin to speak in a way that feels more like you. This is also a great way to reduce the fear of making mistakes. When your sentences are shorter, there's less room to get lost. You finish your thought. You move on. And if something doesn't come out right, it's okay. You can always try again. But the key is to keep things simple, keep things direct. And remember that the goal is not to show how much English you know. It's to share your ideas clearly and connect with others. Let me tell you about someone who might remind you of yourself or someone you know. Her name is Leah. She's from Lyon, France. When I first spoke with her, she shared something I've heard many times before. She said, "I understand English pretty well. I've studied for years. I even watch movies in English. But when it's time to speak, I freeze." Leah was quiet, thoughtful, and incredibly motivated. But her biggest challenge wasn't grammar or vocabulary. It was fear. She was afraid of making mistakes, afraid of looking silly, afraid of not finding the right words. Leah had moved to Berlin to work in a design company. The working language there was English. And although her team was friendly, she found herself avoiding conversations. She would go into the office kitchen and hope no one else was there. She would skip lunch invitations and only speak when she had to. In meetings, she stayed quiet unless someone asked her a direct question. She later told me that her biggest fear wasn't speaking badly. It was freezing in the middle of a sentence and not knowing how to finish it. This is a common experience. Many people who learn English in school focus a lot on rules, structure, and tests. They know how to pass an exam, but real-life conversations feel unpredictable. That unpredictability makes them anxious, and anxiety often leads to silence. But silence doesn't build fluency. Leah knew she had to make a change. She just didn't know where to begin. Then something small happened that made a big difference. Leah lived with a roommate named Helena from Amsterdam. One morning, as they were both making coffee, Helena casually said, "Hey, what's your plan for today?" Leah hesitated. Her first reaction was to give a short answer and move on, but something told her to try just a little more. So she answered, "I have 2 meetings, one in the morning and one after lunch. I also need to finish a presentation." Helena smiled and replied, "Sounds busy. Is the presentation for your manager?" And just like that, a 2-minute conversation happened. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't fast. But it was a start. From that day on, Leah made a simple decision. Every morning during breakfast, she would try to start one small conversation in English with Helena. It didn't have to be deep or long. Sometimes it was just about the weather or what they were going to eat. Other times it was about their jobs, weekend plans, or a movie they'd seen. These tiny conversations became her safe space. There was no pressure, no judgment, just practice. And something amazing started to happen. Leah became more comfortable making small mistakes. She stopped correcting herself every 5 seconds. She began to notice patterns in how Helena spoke, how she used short sentences, how she used fillers like, "I guess," or "kind of," how she paused naturally. Leah started to copy those patterns. She began to feel less like she was doing a language exercise, and more like she was just talking. After a few weeks, she noticed a change at work. In meetings, she spoke up a little more. At lunch, she joined conversations instead of avoiding them. One day, during a client presentation, she gave a short summary of her team's progress, and she did it entirely in English without freezing. She told me afterward that her voice was shaking a little, but no one seemed to notice. In fact, her manager complimented her clarity. The real turning point came a few months later. When she applied for a new job, it was a bigger role in a different company, and the interview was entirely in English. Before the call, she practiced her answers out loud, just like she had practiced her morning conversations with Helena. She kept her responses short, clear, and honest. She focused on connection, not perfection. And you know what? She got the job. What made the difference for Leah wasn't learning new vocabulary or studying complex grammar. It was building a habit of speaking a little bit every day in a safe environment, a habit of choosing connection over fear. And once that habit was strong, her confidence started to grow naturally. There's something powerful about starting small. Many people think they need to wait until they feel confident to speak, but often, it works the other way around. You speak even when you're not confident, and with time, the confidence comes. Leah is proof of that. She started with just a few sentences over breakfast. Now she leads client calls, speaks up in meetings, and feels ready to take on new challenges all in English. I want to emphasize something here. Leah didn't change who she was. She's still soft-spoken, still thoughtful, but now she doesn't let fear make decisions for her. She found a way to practice consistently without pressure. And by doing that, she gave herself permission to improve, little by little. If you're listening, and you've been holding yourself back from speaking, ask yourself this. What's one small conversation you can have today? Maybe it's with a colleague, a friend, or even a language partner online. Maybe you talk about what you had for dinner, your weekend plans, or something simple about your day. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be real. And when you do it again tomorrow, and the next day, something inside you begins to shift. You don't need to wait until you feel fluent to begin speaking. You become fluent by speaking. You become confident by trying. Even if your voice shakes a little, even if you have to pause, even if you need to ask, how do I say this? That's still progress. That's still communication. And that's how real English is learned. Let's say you meet someone new at a language exchange or a social event. Instead of feeling nervous about talking about yourself, you could start with something like, "How did you start learning English?" Or, "What do you do when you're not working?" These are simple, personal questions that invite people to talk about their experiences. They help build connection without needing complex vocabulary or long speeches. Asking questions also shows that you care. When people feel listened to, they feel more comfortable around you. They don't expect you to be perfect in English. They appreciate your interest. And that's what real communication is about. Connection, not perfection. Let me give you a real example. A learner from Warsaw told me that when she first started speaking English at her job, she would freeze during team meetings. She was afraid of saying something wrong. Then one day, instead of trying to make a full comment or share an idea, she simply asked, "Can you repeat that part about the deadline?" It was a small question, but her colleague answered and then asked her what she thought. That moment gave her confidence. From then on, she made it a habit to ask one question in every meeting. Over time, those questions led to more dialogue. And eventually, she started sharing her ideas too. But it all began with a small question. The great thing about questions is that you can prepare them in advance. Think about situations where you speak English. Maybe during work, at school, while traveling, or online. Take a moment and write down 3 or 4 questions that feel natural to you. They don't need to be clever or deep. They just need to be real. For example, at work. What are the next steps for this task? When do you need this by? Can you help me understand this part? With friends? What did you do over the weekend? Do you like living in this city? What kind of music do you listen to while traveling? Is this your favorite place to eat? What's the best thing to do around here? How long have you been working here? Even online during a language exchange or virtual meeting, you can ask, what made you start learning English? How do you usually practice? Do you enjoy speaking or listening more? These questions are short. They're not perfect, but they're enough. And in real life, enough is all you need to connect. There's also a psychological shift that happens when you start asking questions instead of always explaining. You stop feeling like you need to perform. And instead, you start participating. You become part of the conversation. People often worry about how they sound in English. But here's a little secret. People don't remember your grammar mistakes. They remember how you made them feel. When you ask them about their story, their ideas, their preferences, you make them feel valued. And that's something they don't forget. I want you to try this in your next English conversation. Instead of preparing a big answer, prepare a small question. Ask something simple, then listen. And if you're not sure what to say next, ask another question. It's like building a bridge one step at a time. You don't have to go fast. You just have to keep walking. So many learners tell me they feel stuck when speaking because they run out of words. But often, what they really need is not more words. They need better habits. Asking questions is one of those habits. It gives you structure. It gives you confidence. And it helps the conversation flow naturally. So next time you're in a conversation, try asking instead of explaining. You'll be surprised at how much easier it feels, and how much more confident you become just by being curious. Let me tell you a story that I think many of you will relate to. It's about Daniel, a software engineer from Berlin. Daniel loved studying English. He had been doing it for years. He read English books, watched English movies, even used subtitles to improve his vocabulary. He used language apps daily. He knew a lot of words. He followed grammar explanations online. And he felt proud when he understood complex structures. But even with all this study, Daniel had a problem. He rarely spoke English. And when he did, he felt awkward and slow. He worked for a large international company. His team included people from Italy, Sweden, Brazil, and South Korea. They all communicated in English. And yet, Daniel usually stayed quiet during meetings, especially informal ones. He only spoke when he absolutely had to. And he always felt nervous. It wasn't because he didn't know what to say. He just didn't feel confident saying it out loud. The fear of making mistakes, or sounding less fluent than his colleagues, kept him silent. For a long time, Daniel thought he needed more study before he could speak well. He told himself, if I just finish this next course, or once I memorize this list of phrases, then I'll be ready. But the truth was, no amount of silent study was preparing him to speak with real people. He could write great emails. He could understand what others said. But when it was his turn to speak, he froze. Something was missing. One day during a company team-building event, something changed. They were having coffee before a workshop. Daniel found himself standing next to Sophia, a colleague from Lisbon. They had never really talked before. Normally, he would have just smiled politely and waited for the meeting to begin. But that day, he decided to challenge himself. He remembered something he had read, that asking simple questions is one of the best ways to start speaking. So, he asked her, "Do you like working on the new project?" It was a short, basic question, but it opened the door. Sophia smiled and answered enthusiastically. She shared what she liked about the project, what she found challenging, and she asked Daniel what he thought. He answered slowly, carefully, but something felt different. The pressure was lower. He wasn't trying to give a perfect speech. He was just having a real conversation. It didn't feel like a test. It felt like connecting. That experience stayed with him. Daniel realized he didn't need to wait until he felt fluent to start talking. What he needed was to build small habits. So he made a personal rule. Every day at work, he would ask one question in English to a colleague. It could be about anything: work, weekend plans, food, travel, hobbies. He kept it simple. Did you enjoy your weekend? What's your favorite part of this city? Have you worked on a similar project before? Each question led to a short conversation, and each time, he felt a little more confident. At first, he still made mistakes. Sometimes he forgot words, or he paused too long. But his colleagues didn't mind. They appreciated his effort. And the more he spoke, the more natural it became. Within a few months, Daniel was having longer conversations. He no longer hesitated to speak up during team meetings. He started sharing his ideas more openly, and people began to see him, not just as a great engineer, but as a great communicator. But the most important change wasn't about his vocabulary or grammar. It was how he saw himself. Daniel stopped thinking of himself as someone who was bad at speaking. He started seeing himself as a person who could connect with others through English. And that shift made all the difference. He told me something I'll never forget. The turning point wasn't when I learned a new phrase. It was when I asked a simple question and saw someone respond. That made me feel like I could be part of the conversation. That's the real goal, isn't it? To feel like you belong in the conversation. To feel like you can connect, share, and respond. Even if your English isn't perfect, Daniel still studies. He still reads and watches videos in English. But now, he also practices speaking in small, real moments throughout his day. And those moments are where his true progress happens. His story reminds us, it's easy to hide behind study. It feels safe. No one hears you make mistakes when you're reading alone. But growth doesn't happen in comfort. Growth happens in action. And sometimes, the smallest action, like asking a simple question, can lead to the biggest change. So if you're listening to this and thinking, That sounds like me. Remember Daniel's story. He didn't wait until he felt ready. He made a small, clear plan, and he followed through. One question a day. That's all it took to change how he used English in his real life. For example, if I say, "It doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be real," you can repeat it out loud or quietly to yourself. When you repeat real sentences, you train your brain and your mouth to work together in English. And over time, this makes your speaking feel more natural. You can also write. Now, writing isn't the same as speaking, but it helps build the same core skills. Try writing short dialogues. Imagine a conversation between you and a friend. Keep it simple. One sentence from you, one sentence from your friend. Like, "Hey, do you want to get coffee later?" "Sure. What time?" This helps you practice everyday expressions in a way that feels useful and realistic. You can even write about your day in journal form, just a few lines. For example, "Today, I woke up at 7. I went to the gym. I worked from home. For dinner, I had pasta." These simple sentences are your building blocks. You don't need to write essays. You just need to keep the habit going. Here's a fun activity I often suggest. Choose one object in your room and describe it in English. Let's say you pick your phone. You could say, "My phone is black. It's next to my laptop. I use it to check messages and listen to music." Or maybe your coffee mug. "This is my favorite mug. It's blue and white. I use it every morning." This is real English. You're connecting language with your own environment. And that makes the learning stick. One of my favorite tips is to narrate what you're doing, like you're explaining it to someone who can't see you. For example, "I'm opening the fridge. I'm looking for some fruit. I found an apple." Yes, you're talking to yourself, but you're doing it in English. And that's what matters. You're teaching your brain that English isn't something you turn on only in class. It's part of your life. When you turn these small tasks into practice, something magical happens. You stop thinking of English as a subject. You start seeing it as a tool. You stop feeling like a student. You start feeling like a communicator. And that is the shift that builds confidence and fluency. Let me share a quick example. One of our listeners, Sarah from Milan, told me she started describing her meals in English every day. At first, she only said one sentence at breakfast. "I'm eating cereal." Then she added more. "I made coffee. I added sugar. It tastes good." After 2 weeks, she noticed something amazing. When she spoke to her English tutor, she found the words came more easily. Why? Because she had been practicing those words all week. No pressure, no stress, just small, daily habits. So what can you do today? Pick one daily activity, eating, walking, brushing your teeth, and start describing it in English. 1 or 2 sentences is enough. If you enjoy listening to this podcast, pause after a few minutes and repeat something you heard. If you like writing, try writing a short dialogue or journal entry tonight before bed. These small things, done every day, will change how you speak. You won't see it in one day, but in 1 week, in 1 month, you will feel the difference. Today, I want to share a story I think might inspire you. It's about a listener named Irina. She's from Bucharest, Romania. When she first started learning English, she felt like many people do stuck. She had studied grammar. She had memorized vocabulary lists. She even watched English shows with subtitles. But when it came to speaking, she froze. The words were there, but they didn't come out easily. Every time she tried to speak with someone, she hesitated, translating each sentence in her head, unsure if it was correct. Irina worked at a local design studio. Some of her clients were international. She wasn't required to speak English fluently, but she really wanted to. She had dreams of working abroad someday, or at least traveling more confidently. She didn't want to feel limited by language. But the problem wasn't her knowledge. It was that speaking felt unnatural. She told me that when she opened her mouth to talk, her thoughts became slow, like they had to pass through a long tunnel before turning into words. One day, after a long day of work, she went for a walk in a nearby park. It was something she often did to clear her mind. As she walked, she looked around and almost without thinking, she said aloud in English, "There are a lot of people here today." It surprised her. She had never spoken English out loud while alone before. But it felt safe. No pressure. Just her, the trees, the sky, and her voice. That night, she thought about it. Maybe this could be her way of practicing. No audience, no judgment, just a way to turn her thoughts into words in real time. So the next day, she tried it again. As she walked, she started describing what she saw. "I see a man walking his dog. The flowers are yellow and orange. The air is a little cold today." Simple sentences, but real ones. She spoke about what was in front of her, and slowly, something began to shift. At first, she only managed a few sentences during her walks. She'd run out of things to say, or worry about how she sounded. But she kept going. She made it a routine 20 minutes each day, walking and speaking. She didn't need a partner. She didn't need a textbook. Just her phone in her pocket, a path to follow, and her voice. Sometimes she pretended she was talking to a friend, telling them about her day. Other times, she imagined giving directions or explaining something simple like what she planned to cook for dinner. Over time, Irina noticed that she was getting faster, not just in speaking, but in thinking. Words that used to take time now appeared more quickly. She didn't have to pause and translate as much. The connection between her thoughts and her English words became smoother. It wasn't about being perfect. She still made mistakes, but she felt more free, and that freedom was everything. She also noticed changes at work. When she needed to write emails in English, she found the words more easily. When she had short conversations with clients, she didn't panic like before. One day, her manager asked her to help with a short video presentation for an English-speaking partner. A year ago, Irina would have said no immediately. But this time, she said yes. She wrote her part, practiced a few times, and recorded it confidently. It wasn't flawless, but it was clear. And the client responded warmly. What made Irina's progress so powerful was that she used real language in real time. She wasn't memorizing lines or repeating after someone. She was thinking and speaking at the same time, using the English that was already inside her. And because she did it during an activity, she enjoyed walking. She looked forward to it. It became part of her lifestyle, not just part of her study routine. She told me something I'll never forget. She said, "I stopped trying to sound smart. I just started trying to sound real." That's the key. When you stop trying to impress and just focus on expressing, everything changes. You speak more. You enjoy it more. You improve faster. Arena's method might seem simple, but it's incredibly effective. Speaking out loud while walking helped her break the habit of overthinking. It gave her space to explore the language without fear. And because she did it consistently, day after day, her fluency began to grow naturally. Her voice became stronger. Her sentences more fluid. And her confidence more solid. This kind of practice is available to everyone. You don't need special tools. You don't need a perfect plan. Just a little time and the willingness to talk to yourself out loud. Describe what you see. Talk about what you're doing. Pretend you're telling a friend about your day. Let your thoughts move in English. The more you do it, the more automatic it becomes. Arena's story reminds us, fluency doesn't begin in a classroom. It begins in moments, in walks, in routines, in your own voice. And most of all, it begins when you stop waiting for the right words and start using the words you already know. That's how real communication starts to grow. Practice speaking slowly and clearly. There's no need to rush. Just take your time and notice how it feels. And remember, fluency isn't about the rules. It's about finding your rhythm and staying consistent. One of the most important things Sophia discovered was the value of repetition. We often think we need to learn something new every day or study complex grammar. But in reality, repeating simple phrases can have a bigger impact. You don't need endless vocabulary lists. You don't need to stress about every detail. Instead, focus on building comfort with the language. Understand how it's used in real conversations. And practice it consistently. Sophia made English part of her routine. While walking to work, cooking dinner, or watching TV. Every moment became an opportunity to practice. And those small efforts added up. So if you're struggling with confidence, follow Sophia's example. Start with simple expressions. Repeat them. Mimic native speakers. And practice every day. You might be surprised at how quickly your fluency grows. Now, one of the most important steps you can take is to practice active listening. Active listening means when someone is speaking, you focus entirely on them. You don't interrupt. You don't think about your next sentence. And you don't get distracted by your phone or anything else. It means giving the speaker your full attention and letting them finish their thoughts before you respond. When you do speak, you respond in a way that shows you've understood. A great way to practice active listening is through simple exercises in daily life. Try listening to an English podcast or an audiobook. As you listen, pause occasionally and summarize what you've just heard in your own words or by jotting down a few notes. This helps you focus on the main ideas and key details. Afterward, think about how you would respond if you were part of the conversation. How would you add your thoughts to the discussion? Another useful exercise is to listen carefully to someone speaking English. and then ask questions based on what they've said. This shows you're engaged and helps clarify anything you might not fully understand. The more you practice this, the better you'll become at listening and responding naturally and clearly. Here's a practical tip to improve your listening. Take a moment to breathe before you speak. Often, we feel rushed to answer immediately, but giving yourself a few seconds to process what's been said can make a big difference. By taking a breath, you allow yourself time to understand fully and respond with greater clarity. This pause helps you avoid impulsive responses and ensures what you say fits the conversation. Listening is not just about hearing words. It's about engaging with the person and understanding their message. The more you practice listening attentively, the more natural and effective your communication will become. This will improve not only your spoken English, but also your ability to connect with others. By focusing on listening, you create stronger, more meaningful exchanges, helping build better relationships, whether at work, with friends, or in casual conversations. Now, let me tell you about Amir. Amir is a young professional living in Amsterdam, working in a fast-paced international environment. He had learned English in school, and over the years, built a wide vocabulary. He could understand nearly everything that was said to him, and his grammar was fairly solid. But despite all this, Amir struggled in conversations. Whenever he was in a meeting or talking with colleagues, he felt pressure to speak as much as possible, as quickly as possible. He thought that talking more would make him sound fluent and capable. At first, his strategy worked. He could contribute ideas and join discussions. But over time, he noticed more misunderstandings and awkward silences. His colleagues, many also non-native speakers, often looked confused or unsure about what Amir was trying to say. Amir would rush to clarify, but the clarity he wanted was lost in the rush. Amir's breakthrough came one afternoon during a meeting. He was presenting an idea for a new project, explaining every detail in hopes of impressing his team. But as he spoke, he noticed the room's energy change. Some colleagues took notes. Others seemed distracted. A few even nodded off. He felt the tension grow, and then he realized what he'd been doing wasn't working. He was talking too much, too fast, trying to fill every silence, when what he should have been doing was listening more carefully to others' ideas. Later that day, Amir reflected on the meeting. He realized speaking quickly and at length wasn't helping. It was actually holding back his communication. He decided to change his approach. Instead of focusing on how much he could say, he would focus on how well he could listen. Effective communication wasn't about talking a lot or sounding fluent. It was about making sure others understood him, and he understood them. The next time Amir was in a meeting, he made a conscious effort to listen more. He stopped planning his next sentence while others spoke. He focused fully on what they were saying. He let the conversation flow without rushing to fill every pause. When he spoke, he took his time, sharing ideas clearly and concisely. He didn't feel the need to fill silence with unnecessary words. Instead, he made space for others to respond, and conversations began to feel more natural. As Amir practiced listening more and speaking less, He noticed his colleagues' reactions change. They were more engaged. Meetings became less tense. People weren't just waiting their turn. They were actively participating and building on each other's ideas. Amir had shifted the dynamic simply by listening attentively and speaking with intention. One of the most powerful effects of Amir's change was respect. Before, people tuned out or got confused when he spoke too much. Now, when Amir spoke, people listened. They saw he valued their input. His responses were thoughtful and relevant. He wasn't just filling the air. He was contributing meaningfully. Amir's ability to listen improved his communication at work and helped him build stronger relationships. Colleagues began seeking his advice, trusting his judgment. His reputation as a thoughtful, easy-to-talk-to person grew. He became more confident in his role. He no longer felt the need to prove his fluency by talking excessively. He embraced the power of listening and speaking thoughtfully, knowing this was the key to effective communication. As Amir continued practicing, his English improved in other ways too. He became better at understanding different accents and nuances. He noticed subtle details he missed before. And when speaking, he was more deliberate. He realized fluency isn't about speaking fast or using fancy words. It's about conveying your thoughts clearly and confidently, while respecting others' chance to speak. Now, Amir enjoys conversations that are more enjoyable and productive. He doesn't try to dominate discussions. He listens with intent and speaks when it adds value. Colleagues appreciate his calm demeanor. They engage with him more meaningfully. Amir learned that communication isn't just about words. It's about how well you listen and how you use pauses to gather your thoughts. Communication is a two-way street. It's not just expressing yourself, it's creating an environment where others feel comfortable sharing too. By slowing down, listening attentively, and speaking with purpose, Amir improved not only his fluency, but his ability to connect on a deeper level. His conversations feel more natural, and his relationships are stronger. As we explore improving communication, take a moment to reflect on your own habits. Ask yourself some important questions. Do you speak clearly, or are you trying to be perfect? Many learners focus on perfect grammar and avoiding mistakes, but this often leads to frustration and pressure. Trying to be perfect can stop the natural flow of conversation. We overthink. Sometimes we avoid speaking, but no one speaks perfectly all the time, and that's okay. Mistakes are part of learning. What matters most is clarity. If you express ideas simply and clearly, people will understand you even with small mistakes. So, instead of aiming for perfection, focus on clear communication. Next, ask yourself, do you practice English daily even if just for 5 minutes? Consistency matters more than long hours of study. Small, daily practice sessions add up. You might repeat a phrase, practice pronunciation, or listen to a short podcast or video. Try to integrate practice into your daily life. Describe what you see. Narrate what you're doing. Practice small talk with a friend. These little moments make speaking and thinking in English more natural. Finally, reflect on this. What can you do today to improve your communication? There's always room to grow. You don't have to wait until tomorrow to start. Choose one small action you can take right now. It might be practicing speaking aloud for 5 minutes, listening to a conversation, or using a new phrase. It doesn't have to be big. The key is taking action. Remember, improving communication is a journey. You don't have to be perfect, but you do need to be consistent and committed. Keep practicing, keep reflecting, and most importantly, keep connecting with others. Thank you so much for joining me today on English Without Limit. It's always a pleasure to spend this time with you. I hope these tips and stories help you on your path to better communication. As we wrap up, I encourage you to take action. Listening and feeling motivated is great, but real progress happens when you apply what you learn. So here's your challenge. Pick one tip from today's episode and try it out. Maybe slow down your speech to give yourself time to think. Or use simpler, clear sentences next time you speak. Whatever it is, take that first step today. And remember, your English doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be understood. That's the key. It's not about impressing others. It's about connecting with them. When you focus on connection, your confidence grows and your communication improves naturally. If you found value in today's episode, please continue your learning with us. Listen to the next episode for more tips and strategies. Or share this one with a friend who wants to improve their English. Thank you again for being here. I'm proud of the effort you're putting into your English. Keep practicing. Keep applying what you learn. And most importantly, enjoy the process. I'll be here with more tips and stories to help you along the way. Until next time, take care and keep communicating.